Picture this, a quiet evening in central London, the kind where nothing extraordinary is supposed to happen. Prince William walks into a simple diner setup, ready to grab a plate of food like everyone else in the room. But then, something catches his attention. Two cashiers whispering nearby, completely unaware he's within earshot. What he hears in those few seconds, it sets off a chain of events that nobody saw coming. Now, before we get to that moment, let me take you back a few hours earlier. Because what happened that day wasn't just random. It was carefully planned, deeply personal, and honestly pretty unusual for someone in William's position. The whole thing started with an event. Not the kind of stuffy royal gathering you'd imagine, with red carpets and photographers everywhere. No, this was different. William organized it himself. He personally reached out to 3 charities he's worked with for years and invited them all to come together, sit down, share a meal, and just talk. No speeches prepared, no media circus, just genuine connection. People who knew about the planning said William came up with the idea himself. He wanted something simple and real, a way to say thank you that actually felt human. And honestly, that's very William. He's never been one for unnecessary formality. You might remember seeing photos late last year when he showed up at a Christmas event for a homelessness charity with his oldest son, George. The pictures went viral because there they were, father and son, standing behind a food counter, serving meals to guests. William was smiling and chatting away while young George carefully handed out plates, watching his dad closely, learning. It felt so natural, so unstaged, that people couldn't help but think of Diana, and how she used to bring William and Harry along to her charity visits. But this recent gathering? It took things to another level entirely. Because William didn't just host one charity. He brought 3 together under one roof. And when people realized who was attending, jaws dropped. Let me tell you about the first charity that got an invitation. It's called Centrepoint, and it focuses on young homeless people between 16 and 25. Started way back in 1969 by a man named Kenneth Leach and some campaigners who were deeply worried about teenagers sleeping on the streets with nowhere safe to go. What Centrepoint does is provide emergency housing, supported flats, training programs, job placement help, and life skills coaching. Basically, they don't just give young people a roof over their heads, they give them a real chance at independence. William's connection to Centrepoint runs deep. Back in September 2005, fresh out of university, he became their royal patron. It was his very first official patronage, which tells you everything about where his heart was even back then. And it wasn't random. His mother Diana had supported Centrepoint throughout the 90s. But Diana didn't just lend her name to the cause, she actually showed up. She visited their hostels, sat down with homeless young people, listened to their stories, and she brought William and Harry along sometimes. Those visits left marks on William that never faded. As patron, William didn't phone it in. He visited hostels quietly, often without any press around, spending real time listening to people's experiences. In 2009, he did something that really stuck with people. He spent an entire night sleeping rough in Blackfriars, London, trying to understand what homelessness actually felt like. That night changed something in him. You could see it in how he talked about the issue afterward. Today, Centrepoint helps over 9,000 young people every single year. They've built housing projects like Reuben House, which has 33 affordable flats where the rent is capped at just 1/3 of someone's income. That simple rule has helped countless young people move into independent living without constantly fearing they'll end up back on the streets. Under William's patronage, they've also launched a helpline and expanded their programs across the entire UK. So when William invited Centrepoint to this event after more than 20 years of involvement, it wasn't for a fundraiser or a photo opportunity, it was just to show appreciation. Some guests said later that William moved from table to table throughout the evening, asking how things were going, remembering people's names, cracking quiet jokes. For many, it felt surreal. But Centrepoint was just the beginning. The second charity invited was The Passage, one of the most well-known homelessness charities in the UK. Founded in 1980, The Passage runs London's largest voluntary day centre for homeless people. Every single day, they provide meals, showers, clothing, health support, and advice on housing and welfare. They also operate accommodation projects with dozens of beds and supported flats across the city. Here is where it gets personal again. William's connection to the passage started when he was just 11 years old. In 1993, Diana took him there for a visit. That day exposed him to homelessness in a direct, unfiltered way. Diana made sure her sons saw life beyond palace walls, and that visit became one of those childhood moments that shapes who you become. William never forgot it. Years later, in February 2019, he became royal patron of the passage. Since then, he's continued showing up, especially during Christmas, helping serve meals and talking with guests. He's spoken openly about how that childhood visit with his mother influenced his lifelong commitment to ending homelessness. Since the passage was founded, they've helped over 130,000 people facing housing crises. Their prevention programs and supported housing have moved thousands from crisis to stability. So naturally, the passage made William's invitation list. It tied directly into his broader vision, which brings us to the third charity at this gathering. Homewards, the newest of the three, founded just in 2023 and launched by William himself through the Royal Foundation. Unlike traditional charities that provide immediate relief, Homewards focuses on something bigger and longer term. They want to change the entire system. Their goal? To make homelessness rare, brief, and non-repeating. It's a 5-year program supporting early intervention, housing access, employment pathways, and local solutions tailored to specific communities. William plays a direct, hands-on role in Homewards. The program operates in 6 flagship locations across the UK: Aberdeen, Bournemouth, Christchurch, and Poole, Lamb, Newport, and Sheffield. In each place, Homewards brings together local councils, charities, businesses, and crucially people with lived experience of homelessness to design solutions that actually work on the ground. Each location gets seed funding of up to £500,000 to support new ideas. In just the first year, Homewards brought together over 500 individuals and organizations, laying the groundwork for real, community-led change. Of the 3 charities, Homewards is the most ambitious. It reflects William's belief that homelessness can't be solved with short-term help alone. You need cooperation, planning, and long-term thinking. So there you have it. 3 charities, 3 different approaches, 1 shared mission. And all of them gathered together on this particular afternoon. By early evening, guests started arriving quietly. Many had no idea what to expect. As things unfolded, it became clear this wasn't your typical royal engagement. William was present the entire time, but he was listening way more than speaking. Several other members of the royal family attended to honor the occasion, but the focus stayed firmly on the charities and the people they serve. No grand announcements, no media spectacle, just conversations, shared stories, and this palpable sense that something meaningful was happening. For the people in that room, it felt less like a royal event and more like a gathering of people who genuinely cared. And that, honestly, might have been the most shocking part of all. Now let's talk about who showed up. Princess Catherine was there, of course. But here's what really surprised people. All 3 of the Wales children attended. George, Charlotte, and Louis. Their presence meant something. See, within the royal family, there's this long tradition of gradually introducing young royals to public and charitable work. The goal has always been to raise them with a sense of duty, respect, and understanding of service. From early on, they're encouraged to observe, listen, and learn, rather than grab the spotlight. This happens across all kinds of royal events and charity engagements. Sometimes the kids greet guests, sometimes they sit beside senior royals, and other times they just watch and absorb. It's seen as preparation for responsibilities they might carry one day. At this particular event, the 3 children sat at the same table as their parents. They listened closely as conversations unfolded around them. Each charity had its own table with representatives seated together, which kept the focus on the work being done while maintaining this warm, connected atmosphere. Other family members were there too. Princess Anne showed up, which made sense given she's known as one of the hardest-working royals. Her involvement in charity work started in her early 20s, and she's been consistent ever since. Over the years, she's been linked to hundreds of organizations, particularly those focused on homelessness, education, health, and youth development. Her presence felt fitting. Many guests saw it as a quiet show of solidarity. But then there was someone whose attendance genuinely surprised people. Queen Camilla. Now, it's been widely known that William and Camilla haven't always had an easy relationship. Their differences have been discussed publicly for years, and many people associate William's homelessness work very closely with Diana's legacy. So when Camilla decided to attend, eyebrows went up. Some saw it as unexpected, others saw it as meaningful. To many observers, Camilla's presence seemed like a sign of gradual reconciliation. By showing up at an event so closely linked to William's personal mission, and by extension to Diana's memory, it appeared to reflect growing acceptance and unity within the family. For some, it felt like a quiet acknowledgement of the past without words or big gestures, just by being there. As the day progressed, attention turned to the charity representatives. Each organization had sent well-known figures from their leadership alongside frontline workers who deal with homelessness every single day. The first to address everyone was a senior representative from Centrepoint. She'd worked with the charity for over a decade and was known for her advocacy around youth housing reform. She spoke calmly and clearly, thanking William and Catherine for their continued support. She acknowledged the wider royal family for recognizing work that often goes overlooked. Then she outlined Centrepoint's focus for the year ahead. They plan to expand supported housing schemes, particularly for young people transitioning out of care. There was also a renewed push toward employment training, with partnerships being formed with local businesses to offer paid apprenticeships. The goal, she explained, wasn't just shelter. It was stability and confidence. Several guests nodded in agreement, familiar with the challenges she described. After a brief pause, a representative from the passage stood up. He was a long-serving member of the organization and had previously experienced homelessness himself. His presence alone carried weight. He began by expressing gratitude for the continued attention the charity received, especially during winter months when demand peaked. He talked about the passage's plans to strengthen prevention programs. The focus for the coming year was early intervention, helping people before they reached crisis point. This included expanding outreach services, increasing mental health support, and working more closely with local councils to prevent evictions. He also mentioned plans to improve accommodation facilities, ensuring residents felt safe and supported during their stay. His speech was steady and grounded, reflecting the charity's practical approach. By the time he finished, the room felt attentive and thoughtful. The final representative spoke on behalf of Homewards. As the newest initiative, there was strong interest in what lay ahead. The speaker explained that the coming year would focus on turning planning into action. Across the 6 flagship locations, local coalitions were preparing to roll out pilot projects aimed at long-term change. These included new housing access models, employment pathways for people at risk of homelessness, and stronger data sharing between services. The emphasis, he explained, was on learning what worked and scaling it nationally. The ambition was clear, but so was the caution. Systems change, he reminded everyone, took time, patience, and cooperation. When the final speaker sat down, there was a brief moment of silence. Then attention shifted toward William. Many guests had been waiting for this. The unusual nature of the gathering had already sparked curiosity, and there was this quiet eagerness to understand why he'd brought everyone together in this way. William stood and addressed the room with calm presence. He acknowledged that many people were surprised by the invitation and the format. He made it clear the meeting was intentional. The year ahead, he explained, would be demanding for homelessness charities, and he wanted to begin it differently. He spoke about the importance of collaboration, noting that no single organization could solve homelessness alone. He emphasized the value of sharing ideas, learning from challenges, and supporting one another. He also talked about visibility, about how simply showing the public what was being done could inspire wider support and understanding. William highlighted a few priorities for the year: Strengthening early prevention efforts was one. Supporting frontline workers was another. He also stressed the need to keep young people at the center of decision-making, especially those with lived experience. Throughout his remarks, he avoided grand language. Instead, he focused on practical goals and steady progress. His tone suggested determination rather than ceremony. As he concluded, the atmosphere in the room felt settled and purposeful. What had begun as a quiet dinner had become something more, a moment of alignment among people who shared a common goal. By the time William finished speaking, it was already a few minutes past 4 in the afternoon. The room remained quiet, as if no one wanted to break the moment too quickly. He paused briefly, then turned slightly toward Catherine, gently signaling to see if she wanted to add anything. She responded with a small shake of her head, and to let the moment stand as it was. Just as it seemed the event was wrapping up, another unexpected turn followed. One of the charity representatives raised a hand, signaling a desire to speak again. It was the representative from Centrepoint, a familiar face to many. He was acknowledged and invited to address the gathering once more. The room settled into silence as he stood. There was a noticeable shift in the atmosphere, as if everyone sensed something unusual was about to happen. What he said next left both William and Catherine visibly surprised. Unknown to the royal hosts, the charity representatives had held a quiet discussion earlier that day. They'd agreed among themselves that this gathering shouldn't end without a gesture of their own. This moment, the representative explained, was the result of that shared decision. He began by thanking William, Catherine, and the wider royal family for their continued support. He spoke about how the backing they received went far beyond funding or appearances. It helped raise awareness, opened doors, and reminded the public that homelessness was an issue deserving attention and action. Then came the surprise. The representative revealed that the Charities had arranged a dinner in William's honor that very evening. It wasn't intended as repayment or formal recognition. Rather, it was meant as a simple way of saying thank you. A quiet gesture planned with care to show appreciation for years of standing beside them. The proposal caught the room off guard. For a brief moment, William appeared speechless. It's widely understood that royals rarely attend unofficial events, especially ones organized on such short notice. CES are usually planned weeks or months in advance, guided by protocol and security considerations. Yet William has often shown a willingness to balance tradition with a more modern approach. It's one of the reasons so many people admire him. He leaned slightly toward Catherine, exchanging a few quiet words with her. Observers nearby believed they were discussing the unexpected invitation and its implications. The pause that followed felt longer than usual, filled with anticipation. Then William stood once more. He made it clear the invitation had come as a surprise. Still, in the spirit of togetherness that had defined the afternoon, he decided to accept. The timing, he acknowledged, was sudden, but the intention behind it mattered. In keeping with the purpose of the gathering, he agreed to honor the dinner. The reaction was immediate. The charity representative looked visibly relieved and delighted. Others in the room shared smiles and quiet nods. Soon after the formal part of the event concluded, arrangements were made. Representatives from the Charities departed first. William and Catherine followed shortly after, leaving discreetly. They were driven away in a royal vehicle with no attempt to draw public attention. Events like this were rare, and discretion remained important. They arrived at the venue a little past 5:15 in the evening. The dinner was held at a modest private function space within a well-known commercial hospitality venue, the kind often used for small receptions and charity gatherings. The room had been carefully prepared. Tables were set neatly. Catering staff stood ready. Everything had clearly been arranged with thought and effort. Seeing the setup, William reportedly reflected on how much work had gone into the evening. He turned to Catherine and quietly remarked on how different things might have been had he declined the invitation. She responded with a warm smile, suggesting it was good he chose to attend. Their schedules were often full, and they couldn't accept every invitation, but moments like this helped show appreciation and brought the monarchy closer to the people. Public opinion seems to support that view. Recent polls across the UK had consistently placed William and Catherine among the most favoured members of the royal family. Many believed it was due to their approachable manner, their focus on real issues, and their efforts to bridge the gap between tradition and modern life. The dinner itself unfolded smoothly. It was a self-service arrangement with guests moving toward the buffet area where food was laid out. Despite polite insistence from the organizers that he should remain seated, William declined. He chose instead to queue alongside everyone else, collecting his own meal. Catherine followed his lead without hesitation. Their ease in the setting stood out. It was one of those rare moments where they could mingle freely, exchanging brief conversations and smiles without ceremony. For the charities involved, it was a powerful reminder that their work was seen and valued. As the evening progressed, an unexpected moment began to unfold, a moment no one in the room had anticipated. By the time William reached the buffet area, the room had settled into an easy rhythm. Plates clinked softly, cutlery moved. Low conversations filled the space. When his turn came, he studied the options briefly and chose fish and chips, a familiar, unshowy choice that matched the mood of the evening. The servers, a married couple who had worked the event many times before, froze for a moment when they realized who stood in front of them. Surprise spread quickly across their faces. It wasn't every day that the heir to the throne queued for supper like any other guest. They greeted him with visible excitement, their smiles wide and genuine. William returned the greeting without hesitation, acknowledging them with warmth and patience. There was a brief exchange, the kind that carried that quiet thrill of meeting someone you've only known through screens and headlines. For the couple, the moment carried that familiar mix of disbelief and pride, the sense that an ordinary working evening had suddenly turned into something they'd talk about for years. They served him carefully, still half stunned, and stepped back as he collected his plate. Catherine followed just behind, carrying her own meal. As William turned to leave the serving area, his attention caught on a low conversation nearby. Two women sat a short distance away, both wearing staff badges, clearly working as cashiers for the evening. They were speaking quickly, unaware of who had passed within earshot. William heard only fragments. One voice carried the weight of strain, mentioning the loss of a place to stay. The other spoke of charities and temporary help, of finding a solution until money could be saved. He didn't stop. He didn't turn or look back. He walked on beside Catherine, his expression unchanged. She noticed, however, a slight shift in his focus, a pause that didn't quite fit the calm of the moment. They returned to their seats and began to eat, the evening continuing around them as planned. After a while, Catherine glanced at him again. Something in his manner lingered. She leaned closer, quietly attentive, and asked if anything had unsettled him while they were getting their food. William then shared what he'd overheard, careful to explain that it was only part of a story. He hadn't caught names or details, only the sense that one of the women was struggling with accommodation and had nowhere safe to go. At that point, nothing was certain. It was possible he'd misunderstood. Still, the concern stayed with him. Catherine listened, and after a moment suggested they should speak to the women before the evening ended. If someone needed help, it was better to be sure. Discreetly, one of the event attendants was asked to locate the two staff members and invite them over. When the women approached, they were confused at first. Neither had realized that William and Catherine were present at the event. The request alone was enough to leave them unsettled. By the time they reached the table, both looked stunned. They introduced themselves quietly. One gave her name as Elizabeth. The other, standing slightly behind her, said she was Sarah. William spoke first, asking if everything was all right with them. There was no mention of what he'd heard. The question was simple and open. Both women hesitated. Elizabeth glanced at Sarah, unsure how to respond. It was Catherine who eased the moment, encouraging them to speak freely and assuring them they weren't in trouble. The tension softened. Elizabeth then explained that the issue wasn't hers, but her colleagues'. She gestured gently toward Sar. Sarah took a breath and began to speak. She explained that she'd lost her previous job months earlier and had only recently secured this new role. During that period, she'd fallen behind on rent and was asked to leave her accommodation. Since then, she'd been staying temporarily with friends, moving between places with no stable option ahead. The strain of it showed in her careful words and lowered gaze. When she finished, the table fell quiet. William responded calmly, reassuring her that help could be arranged. He signaled to a representative from Centrepoint, the homelessness charity seated nearby. The representative recognized the signal at once and came over without delay. Introductions were made. William explained that Sarah was in urgent need of accommodation and asked that she be supported as quickly as possible. The representative listened closely, greeted Sarah with kindness, and exchanged contact details with her. It was made clear the situation should be addressed as early as the following day. Relief washed over Sarah's face. Gratitude followed, expressed again and again, her composure giving way to emotion. Elizabeth stood beside her, equally moved, hands clasped tightly as she watched the moment unfold. The event continued not long after, drawing gradually to a close. Guests departed, conversations ended, the hall returned to stillness. William didn't seek updates that night. He trusted the charity and the people who worked within it, confident they would act. The following day, Centrepoint contacted Sarah. Arrangements were made, and she was provided with temporary accommodation, giving her space to stabilize and plan her next steps. She was also encouraged to share information about the charity with others who might be facing similar hardship, so support could reach further than one case alone. William never asked for confirmation. For him, the act was complete the moment the right people were connected. He knew the work would be done. Now, here's something to think about. Would Sarah have gotten help if William hadn't been there that evening? If he hadn't overheard that whispered conversation? It's impossible to say for certain. Maybe she would have found her way to Centrepoint eventually. Maybe a friend would have pointed her in the right direction. Or maybe she would have continued struggling, moving from couch to couch, never quite finding the stability she needed. What we do know is this: that moment changed everything for her. Not because a prince swooped in like some fairy tale hero, but because someone with the means to connect her to help actually did it. No hesitation, no bureaucracy, just immediate, practical action. And that's really what this whole evening was about, wasn't it? Not the formality. Not the photo opportunities or the headlines. It was about human connection, about seeing a problem right in front of you and deciding to do something about it. Think about how easily William could have walked past. He'd already done his part by organizing the event, by bringing the charities together, by showing support. He could have enjoyed his fish and chips, made small talk, and called it a successful evening. But instead, he paused. He listened. He acted. That's the kind of leadership that actually makes a difference. Not the grand speeches or the ceremonial appearances, but the quiet moments when someone chooses to see another person's struggle and respond with compassion. And here is what makes it even more powerful. William didn't tell anyone about it afterward. There was no press release, no staged photo opportunity. He simply made sure Sarah was connected to the help she needed and moved on. If those details hadn't emerged later through other sources, we might never have known about it at all. That tells you something about his approach to this work. It's not about credit or recognition. It's about results. It's about people like Sarah getting the support they need to rebuild their lives. So what can we take away from all this? Maybe it's that change doesn't always happen through massive policy shifts or million-pound initiatives. Sometimes it happens in a buffet line. Sometimes it happens because someone overhears a conversation and decides it matters enough to act. And maybe, just maybe, it reminds us that we all have opportunities to make those connections. We might not have a charity representative on speed dial like William does, but we can still pay attention. We can still listen. We can still point someone toward help when they need it, because at the end of the day, that's what this story is really about. It's about noticing the person standing right in front of you. It's about understanding that behind every face, there's a story. And behind every story, there might be a struggle you can help ease. So here's my question for you. What would you have done in William's position? Would you have stopped to investigate what you overheard, or would you have assumed it wasn't your place to get involved? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm genuinely curious to hear what you think. And if this story resonated with you, If it reminded you that small actions can create big ripples, then hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this one. Stories about real moments, real people, and real change happening in unexpected ways. There's another video waiting for you right now on your screen. Trust me, you'll want to check it out. It's just as compelling as this one, and it'll give you even more to think about. Until next time, remember this: compassion doesn't need a crown. It just needs someone willing to act when the moment calls for it. Take care,